Fantastic. So thank you very much for staying. We're going to have a look at this 9-step guide. It's a basic, how do I run a prayer space if I've never done that before? You'll find it in this little pamphlet as well, so it's in there. I've given you a handout if it's helpful for you to have something to write on as well. Just to introduce us, my name's Lizzie and this is Rich, and we work down in Brighton and Hove for a Christian charity called Off the Fence, and we run prayer spaces quite regularly, so every 2 or 3 weeks we'll run a prayer space. We were running one last week, we'll be running one next week. So we're going to take you through this 9-step guide and kind of talk through how do I get started with prayer spaces, and with a little bit from our experience as well. So I'm guessing, I've spoken to a few of you this morning. It's been nice to get to know some of you. I'm guessing some of you work in school, maybe you're teachers, TAs, maybe some of you work for a church, and maybe some of you are just have a heart for your local school and you're interested in serving the local community. Well, the good news is whatever you do, whatever your job is, prayer spaces it is possible for you to run a prayer space, and we're going to think through how to do that. So if we can flick to the next slide and we'll have a think about where to get started, so what to do first. And you've heard this a little bit this morning already, but the Prayer Spaces in Schools website is a fantastic place to start. If you haven't already had a look there, it's just a great space to get some inspiration, to see what other people are doing. They have lots of top tips. They have this 9-step guide there, and loads of ideas of prayer activities that you can run that are tried and tested. So that's a great place to start. You can also, if possible, it's a great thing to try and visit somebody else who's running a prayer space. So if you're aware of another one that's happening, that's fantastic. You might not be, though. So if that's the case, get in touch with someone from Prayer Spaces, email info@prayerspaces, and they'll be able to tell you if there are other prayer spaces going on in your area that you'll be able to visit. And top tip number 1, if you go and visit a prayer space, don't go on your own. So try and take somebody with you, either from your school, from your church, somebody who potentially can help you and become part of that core team, because prayer spaces, well, we heard from Alex this morning, didn't we? He did a lot of the work himself, his first one, and he was saying maybe that was an error. Prayer spaces are much better when they're run by a team, a group of people. It takes a bit of effort to get them off the ground. So if you take somebody with you to visit a prayer space, you may well find you've formed your core team, and somebody else is now inspired to help you in that journey. We've seen loads in Brighton and Hove, loads of schools have gone to visit their neighbouring school. Teachers have come to visit a neighbouring school where a prayer space is being run, and they've kind of caught the vision. And we've seen in Brighton and Hove just the kind of overflow of that, and more schools wanting to host a prayer space because they've seen what's going on in their neighbouring schools. The next one is obvious. I'm glad Rich prayed at the beginning, and maybe this prayer point should have been number 1 there. But please pray. If you want to run a prayer space, please be praying about it. Hopefully that's obvious. But again, don't be praying on your own. It's a great thing. Maybe if you're at school and you've got a group of Christian parents who meet to pray weekly or something like that, get them involved in praying that this prayer space could happen. If you're part of a church and you've got a small group, or you could get your church leader involved, just try and help other people catch the vision for this and get people praying for their local school and praying that this prayer space idea might happen. And then lastly on there it says start with the relationships that you have. So again, in your school or your local school, who do you know who you think might be interested in this? So think about teachers, TAs, governors, even students, maybe who are Christians and who might want to be involved in this. Start with people that you know, and similarly in church, start with your contacts who you think, well, they might have capacity to try and make this happen. They might have a real heart for teenagers. Maybe that this guy really loves prayer. Maybe he'll be interested. Try and start with the people who you know and build a team from there, because prayer spaces really work best when you've got a local church, a local school working together to make it happen. I think that's probably the best model. So number 2, thank you.
Brilliant. And I think one of the first things that comes up there is relationship. And Lizzie said a lot about it already. We're actually just about to go into 2 prayer spaces in Hove and in Brighton. There's schools that have been paired together. They have a deputy head at the moment who's working across both schools, helping them. One of them has been struggling a little bit with its Ofsted, so they're being encouraged to work together. But it's the relationship that we have with that deputy head that's inspired the second school and other schools to ask us, can you come and help us with a prayer space? And he himself came and visited a prayer space at a secondary school about 3 years ago. So he came and he saw, and he took it back to his head. The head thought about it for a while and then talked to us, and it sort of flows on from there. It snowballs. So relationship is really important. But I think relationship is also important, that we don't want prayer spaces just to be something that we sort of parachute in and we come in and we do, but we want relationship with the school to be something that's really important, that we grow. And actually, prayer spaces may not be the first thing we can do in the school. There may be something further on. We could get involved in the school, and then prayer spaces may follow, or they may give us more opportunities to become involved in other things within the school and build that relationship. And that's why it's important that we get the local church and local people, parents, etc., involved, because it's about nurturing a whole relationship within that school environment. And there's so much more that can come out of it apart from this one thing, although that's what we're focusing on today. I've got all these practical elements, and I sort of feel that they come next, that we've heard quite a lot about some of them already and about some of the resources. So I'm going to sort of skip through them quite quickly, not because they're not important, but because you've heard about them and you've heard that there are new documents that are available that are on the website that I haven't even seen yet, but they're great. But you've heard those things. We heard it from Alex this morning. You've just heard it from Liz as well. Research. Check out the curriculum. Find out about SMSC. Find out about the RE curriculum. That can vary from one school to another, even in the local area, because there are certain guidelines, and then the school works out how it teaches it. Some of you will know better that than I do. But even in the 4 secondary schools that we work in on a regular basis in Brighton and Hove, the way they approach and deliver RE is very different. And therefore, finding out about that. I'd also say, if you know that you're going to be going into a school to run a prayer space, research the school. Spend some time having a look at their website. If you're not a member of that school community already, it doesn't hurt for you to find out, well, how many pupils are there? What does it say? What's the aims of the school? Are they a loving, caring school? What are their objectives? What's the name of their head? How does it work? There's just information that's there that, again, if you're going in for the first interview or meeting about prayer spaces and you want to talk about them, as well as knowing exactly what prayer spaces can offer, you want to know about the people. You do it for an interview if you're going for a job or something like that, but it just helps you have a good feeling about, actually, this is where prayer spaces could fit in. Other things that are up on this list are safeguarding. DBS is very important, we've heard. Liz again said schools are very professional places. And again, there's a very different approach from school to school of how you can do this. Some schools will say to us, we require every person coming in to have a full, clear DBS, and we want photographic identification. Some may ask for a list in advance, some on the day. Some might just say, like we are at the moment, your core team, they're all checked. Great, we'll check them. Anyone you bring in, we trust your relationship. Again, that comes out of relationship. It can vary, but be ready for that. You'll probably need to make sure that you have a full team who are DBS checked and are willing to take that in with identification. It may also be worthwhile if you're going to do lots and lots of prayer spaces, and the website for prayer spaces will encourage you to do this. Should you write your own safeguarding policy and agree it with the school in advance? something that you both are happy with. Quite often schools will say, well, you're operating within our child protection or our safeguarding policy, but you need to know how that works. We quite often find that when we go for our first interview, we will ask, what is the school safeguarding policy? Who are the appointed people? And if we have any concern, what should we do during a prayer space? It can just be that one of the children, one of the young people writes something that flags up a concern. And it may be something that the school are already fully aware of. But if they've written something that is of concern, it needs to be addressed, it needs to be raised, it needs to be passed on. So you need to know how to do that. And sometimes it's as easy as the class teacher or the person who's with you, but it may be different. You need to know that. And then just some other things. Risk assessment, again, it's good. What are the hazards or potential hazards? How are we going to approach this? What are we going to do? Just the normal things that we probably do, but to formalise so that everybody is happy before you go further forward. Again, this information is all on the website, so if you don't get it all written down, don't worry too much, because you'll be able to grab it from the Prayer Spaces website. Then finally, the last couple of things, just thinking about the equipment. I love that line. I don't know that I can do a prayer space, I haven't got a bubble tube. But if you are taking equipment in, it needs to be of a suitable standard. It should be PAT tested. The school equipment will be kept to that standard. You need to make sure anything that you are using is. And then we get to the team. The team is really important. We've talked about relationship, where you find them, how you attract them. You'll know the different people that you can draw close to you. But it's important you look after them. We always make sure when we set up a prayer space or run it, we have at least 2 packets of biscuits, as well as some tea bags. Because although you're in a school situation and most are happy for you to go in the staff room and make a cup of tea, you shouldn't assume that's okay. But you need to look after the people who are volunteering and working with you as well. You need to make sure they have breaks, but you also need to, in advance, prepare them, teach them, train them, and show them these are the activities that we're doing, these are the standards that we expect. Maybe even to the extent of, this is what we would expect you to wear. First of all, to be professional enough, but also to be aware that you're probably going to end up on your knees while you're talking to a young person at the side of a table, or you might be clearing up Play-Doh, or you could get ink over you, or you don't know. You need to be thinking about what those are. So it's good to advise them in advance. We would always, for our volunteers, a couple of weeks in advance, send out an information sheet with the address of the school, where they can park, how long they need to leave to sign in, what the expectations are in terms of DBS and identification. We will then list for them also the prayer spaces that we'll be doing, so that they have an idea, they can think about them in advance, and just give them a contact number as well, so that they can reach us if they have any questions. I've got some examples of that with me, so when we've done this over coffee, if you want to come and have a look at the sort of thing, you can come and have a look, take a photo. That's fine for you to use those sort of things. But team are important. You need to make sure that they're looked after well, and they're happy, that they're not overwhelmed by it, but they can deliver everything you really want.
Okay, number 3 is registering your prayer space. This is a very easy one to do. For those of you who love admin, this is an easy tick. For you, you need to head to the Prayer Spaces website, and you can very easily register your prayer space. It's a good thing to do. It's a good thing for you, and it's a good thing for prayer spaces nationally if you're able to do this. It's a good thing for you because once you've registered, then the team, Phil and Tandia, will know that you exist, will know that your prayer space exists. They'll be able to offer to pray for you. They'll offer advice. They might be able to link you up with other people in your area who have experience. So it's great for you getting linked in with prayer spaces nationally. But it's good for the Prayer Spaces team as well if you register, just so that next year at the conference you can be part of those stats. They will know how many prayer spaces are happening. They'll know where they're happening in the country and where they're not happening so much. So it's just useful for the team to know what's going on. And after our prayer spaces, we often just send an email to Phil and Tandy and just say, this is what we did, this is what went well, these are the things that we learnt, and just keep that conversation going so that we can all kind of be learning from each other. So that's number 3, easy hit.
Yeah, I think there's even a picture of what it looks like. There you go.
There it is.
I do know that also if you're doing lots of prayer spaces, they're quite happy for you to email them, but it's very easy to fill in the form. I've done that as well. Thank you. The next slide. is just talking about choosing a room. Now, we don't always get a choice. Or if you get a choice, it could be, you can have this room, or you can have this room, which is a bit small, but there is usually space. And we're just going to talk about the different options there are. And I think, again, we've heard different advice or different comments and experience. I think, again, it was Alex, wasn't it, who was talking about, the space was too small. But there are different ways for us to approach it. When you go in, quite often there is a room somewhere, and it can be, we heard, wasn't it, the story of the library, and it wasn't covered with books anymore. There will be spaces there, but you want to think about several things, and I think they're up there. First of all, the size. Is it big enough to run a prayer space? What are your expectations of the prayer space? Now, I say you don't always get a choice. Is it going to be a classroom? Is it a hall? Will you end up in a church? You don't know, but the size will determine the number of students, pupils that you can have come in, the number of activities you can do. So it is really important. The shape of it can also obviously have a difference. We have run prayer spaces in libraries, and actually in some cases they're really nice because you can cover all the books and material, and then you have these individual little segments where you can put an activity, but it may not be the ideal sort of thing for you. We've run them in L-shaped rooms. We're about to run a prayer space in possibly one of the smallest spaces we've ever used in the next couple of weeks, which is just a space off before the students go into the hall. But we reckon we can do it, so I hope that's okay. Think about things like, up here, access. Access for you and your team, but also access for any students who maybe have any disabilities, anyone in a wheelchair. One of the secondary schools that we work in quite a lot, we've run 5 years, prayer spaces at Lent. We have an amazing, big, long room in that attic. It's fantastic. It's usually a maths classroom. Teacher there is so great in allowing us to use it. It's brilliant. We can have a whole class, a whole sort of year 8, year 9 class at a time. Lots of room for activities. The only problem is it's up a flight of stairs, which means that last year we had 3 or 4 students who, even though there's a lift to the floor below, the only way we were going to get them up was if we carried them up, which we were happy to do, but it just causes lots of challenges with risk assessments and health and safety and safeguarding, and so they couldn't come. So access is really important. And access is important for you as well in terms of how you're going to get your equipment in, how you're going to get your equipment out. Lots of things to think about. PowerPoints is there because you're going to have fairy lights. And you just need to work out where they are. One of the things that we will always do is when we're shown rooms is to go in and ask permission, but to take lots of photographs, because you see things afterwards, or people ask you questions after you've seen the room, and you think, I don't know, I didn't check that out. And you can check out where they are. Then make a floor plan of where the PowerPoints are and the space that you think you've got, how many tables there are in the room, how many chairs there are. It helps with thinking and planning. It also helps that if that's the room that you do use, once you've used it, you can return it to the state that you had it in before you started, which is only fair on the teacher whose classroom it might be. PowerPoints. Sole use is also another challenge one. Sometimes I said that's the but. You can have this amazing room, but it's needed for breakfast club or music lessons after school, or it's used for this. When you set up a prayer space, really you need the space just to be solely for you, not just for the days that the children, the pupils are coming, but you need it for your setup and your pack down as well, without anything else happening around you. It's really hard to create spaces that you can push together. It just wastes time. It's not practical. It doesn't quite work. It can happen, but you really need that space just for you. And the last thing that's on there is visit. Go and have a look. The prayer space we have just run, the head teacher actually sent us some photos of the room. The room when we arrived, even though we had her photos, was very different, very cluttered.
Yeah, very busy.
Very busy, very different. You need to see it for yourself so that you can get an idea what's going on. I think it also makes sense, it's common sense. So we've got some pictures of different types of rooms just to show you. So first of all, a couple of pictures of classrooms. They look so tiny up on that screen behind there. These are a couple of examples of spaces that we've created. The one on the bottom left actually was what's prayer space we ran just for teachers on an inset training day, which was really amazing over in Worthing. Classrooms are fantastic, but obviously normally you have notice boards all around that are covered in amazing work, which you don't want to destroy, deface, but if you can cover them with material and do things like that, it's great. You'll have tables. Lots of advantages, but classrooms can sometimes be busy. They could be needed for other things. Might need access to student drawers where they keep their books and their pencil cases. Just different things to think about. So classrooms are quite often a good option. Thank you. Okay, halls. If you're offered a hall, it is great, but it's like being in here. If someone said, can you rent a prayer space in here? The idea is amazing, but you sort of think, actually, it's a really big space to fill. Even if you put lots of gazebos in and do lots of things, it's hard to create that wow factor that we've been hearing about. And also halls tend to be used for lots of things, don't they, in school? You know, that's where lunches are served, or that's where PE happens. So they can be a disadvantage. This picture was actually taken, this is the drama studio school that we work in. We were helping with their enrichment days. We were using a particular type of resource there, but we didn't really go for any other decoration apart from what they were doing, but it was just a massive space. And as you can see, the students set out. The next one, thank you, outdoors. Lots of schools have jungle areas, they call them, or all sorts of breakout areas and different things. We actually had one countryside school asked us, can we do it in the woods? And it sounded amazing. And they had lots of space for it, lots of ideas. But you've got also the challenges of security for equipment. Are you going to run power? Is that safe? What about the weather? Again, think about it. Can I run a marquee? You could put marquees outside if you have that place. We have helped one group run a massive prayer space in a big marquee in the middle of their quad. It looked fantastic, but it was very cold and it was wet. Just all those things to think about. There are advantages to it. It can create the space that isn't anywhere else, but it can create extra challenges as well. I think the next one is small space or cupboard. This is Lizzie, tucked away in the corner of the window of one of the secondary schools we work in, running a prayer space. They can be really nice because you can have a small group and you can have really good interaction with that group, but obviously you can be aware of the challenges, particularly if you've got slightly older students later in the day and it's a warm day or anything like that, just in being a little bit close together. And the one above is a school we're going back to in November. We actually there used the corridors that run between their halls and classrooms, which are normally thoroughfares for all the students. This is the only space that they can find for us. It's actually really lovely because it gives us depth in terms of length, but you get lots of interruptions of people who forget to even know the doors are blacked off and closed. You know, but corridors can work, small spaces can work. Is there another one? Okay, yeah, church buildings. So again, a church is quite often a nice space. It could be a space that's available for a whole week with none of the other interruptions, but you have the challenges of creating it. And I think the other thing about it is we're talking about prayer spaces in school and the idea of we can pray anywhere and do these things anywhere. So actually having it in the school environment sometimes is nicer than the church environment, but it can be an option. Is that the last one? Yeah, there you go.
Okay, on to number 5, and choosing your prayer activities. So you've agreed with the school, you can go in, you've chosen your place that you're going to set up, you've got a team together. Now what are you actually going to do? This is where you can get creative, where you can have a bit of fun, get your creative juices flowing. And again, I'm going to say the first thing to do is to head to the website, simply because there's so many tried and tested prayer activities on the Prayer Spaces website that if you don't have any kind of ideas of your own, you can quite easily pick 4 or 5, just take them, lift them off the website and run with it. It's really simple, especially for your first one. So to do that, you just need to register on the Prayer Spaces website if you haven't done that already. Stick your email address, create a password, and then everything is free to download. So that's one really simple way to do it. We always try to kind of cover the basics of prayer. So we always try and have a way to say sorry, a way to say thank you, a way to say please, a way to ask big questions. So we try and cover those kind of basic elements of prayer and have a different activity for each. You might also want to think, is there a particular theme that the school want you to cover? So in December, we're heading back to school for the 4th year in a row, and we're running another Advent prayer space. They've asked us to run those each year. And that's awesome. It's so exciting to get a room and to bring our fake Christmas tree in and put it up and decorate with all our Christmas decorations. And then thinking about that theme of Advent and waiting and thinking what kind of activities can you do and help students to engage with that and pray in the light of Christmas coming. That's really exciting. But other themes you can think maybe in summer or September, schools might want a kind of transition and change theme in a prayer space. You could look at the school's values or the school's motto or something like that and see, can you kind of think of some prayer activities to shape around that? That's another way to go. So you choose some prayer activities, and then you've got to think, well, where are you going to get this equipment from? Where are you going to find your bubble tube? And if you're lucky enough to have a prayer spaces budget, then head to Amazon, click away, nice and simple, it'll all arrive. But otherwise, I think it's been said before today, there are plenty of organisations around, or maybe your local church, or even the school itself. It's worth asking the question, have you got any resources that we might be able to borrow and put in that room for that week? There are often things kind of squirreled away that people only use every so often and are more than happy for you to borrow for a week. So it's worth asking. Ask around at church or at school. And then there's also loads and loads of things that are really effective that actually cost nothing. I was telling someone earlier today, there's a prayer activity we do, it's big questions, I think it's on the website. We just rip up cardboard boxes and have kind of squares of cardboard that are ripped up so they're nice and kind of tactile and they look cool. And then kids write their big questions to God in Sharpies on those and peg them up on a string. That costs nothing, and it looks really cool, and the kids love it. So it's worth kind of thinking a bit creatively if you don't have a big budget, and just seeing what you can kind of scrounge for free. Also, don't forget to go in the loft and find your fairy lights from Christmas. Get the Christmas box out, and you'll find a few things in there that can just help make the space look really cool. So it's, we've said it before. Start with the tried and tested ones. There's lots on the website that have been tried before. And then creating new prayer activities, or kind of thinking, if you've got an idea yourself and you think, oh, I think this might work, it's great to create new activities and to have a go. In the second lot of workshops, actually, there's a workshop all about creating new prayer activities. So I'm not going to say any more about that now. Go to that workshop if you're kind of bubbling up with ideas and see what you can come up with there.
I was going to say, apart from if you do, then send them into prayer spaces so other people can see them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also worth just considering, are you doing primary, are you doing secondary? What are kind of the restrictions on age? What will the students be able to cope with in terms of prayer activities? Will they be able to write? So it's no good having a group of reception and asking them to write a prayer, because most of them at that stage won't be able to manage that. So think, what will the students be able to cope with? Try and as well with, say if you're doing 5 different prayer activities, you don't want all of them to be sit down and write a prayer on this piece of paper, sit down and write a prayer on this post-it note. You want some that are kind of more tactile, some where there's something to listen to, something to do, something to touch, something to smell even. Be creative and try and use all the senses to engage different students with different learning styles. We also try and think just practically with the prayer activities, how's it going to work? So the way that we run things, we will get the class in, or half a class, do a little introduction with them. And then from reception up to year 3 or 4, we tend to then split them into little groups of 4 or 5 students and have a leader, an adult, take them round the prayer activities and kind of help them and explain things as they go. With year 4 up all the way through secondary, we do an introduction, talk about prayer for a bit, and then say, off you go, explore the room and see what you want to do. Then they can do one activity for a long time. If they want to, they can try and do them all. It then gives them a bit of freedom, and we're there to help them if they need that. So I've just got a few of my favourite prayer activities that we've done. There's Rich leading the Sorry Shredder activity. The Sorry Shredder is a very simple idea. You've got a paper shredder, and we use little bits of paper with a sad face on them. And get students to think, what things have you done that you feel you need to say sorry for? It's very simple. They can write them or draw them on that piece of paper. And then you will find kids of all ages love the paper shredder. It's very, very exciting to be able to shred a piece of paper. So it's very exciting. Everyone wants to do it. But you get some really, really heartfelt moments at the Sorry Shredder. We did a prayer space just on Tuesday, actually, and one of the young girls in that prayer space wrote on her feedback, when I shredded my piece of paper, it made all the pain go away. And that's just amazing. There was another space that we did probably a year ago now, actually. It was at a secondary school. And I'd noticed that a young lad was sat at the Sorry Shredder. He wasn't doing anything. He was on his own. He was just sat there. And I watched him for a little bit to see, is he okay? And I went over and I said, do you want to do this activity? Are you all right? Do you want to go and do another one? And he said, well, I want to do this one. But if I do it, am I allowed to use more than one piece of paper? And so it was great. We were able to have a little chat, and I could tell him, look, even if you use all the paper in this room, God is still able to forgive what you've done. You can't out-sin God. He will always forgive you. So you have great moments like that with the Sorry Shredder. Can we do the next one? Oh, this is one of our prayer games. So we've got this big dice and lots of laminated pictures on the floor. So we have a picture of food, a picture of school, a picture of family, a picture of friends. And we stand in the circle around, and we throw the dice, and then we march around that number around the circle, and we land next to a picture. And then the idea is you think of something you want to say thank you for to do with that picture. And that's really great. Then they just say their prayers out loud as they play that game. And the next one, we've got, it's great to pray for the world, we've heard, and not just be praying for ourselves. This is world flags, so they colour a flag on one side and then write a prayer for that country. So they can think which country do they particularly want to pray for and choose that. Then make it into a little flag with a stick. And one of my colleagues spent a very happy afternoon painting that polystyrene world. So you can then, in the polystyrene, you can plant your flag, and it makes a lovely display there. Then we've got hopes and dreams. This is a great chance to get the paddling pool out. I think you'd probably very easily be able to borrow a paddling pool because we only get kind of 1 or 2 sunny days in England. So the rest of the time, the paddling pool is in the loft. So try and borrow a paddling pool. And this is Hope Blossoms, we call it. So we have little outlines of flowers. And the students write or draw, what are they hoping for the future? What do they want to pray about for their future? And then they fold it up and place it on top of the water. And then by magic, well, it's not magic, it's science, but the water absorbs and the flowers open, and they can kind of see their hopes being revealed. A little top tip again, don't use felt tip pens if you're going to do this, because they just run in the water, and then it has kind of the opposite effect of, oh, my hope has disappeared. So you use pencils or Sharpies, and that's much better for that one. But that's quite a nice one to do. Oh, they're just made of paper. If you fold them if you don't kind of press too hard when they sit on the paper, because then the paper starts to absorb, and then they do just open. Try it. It's science. It's great. And then these are the last couple I'll talk about. These are both ones that we've done in a secondary school, all about giving your worries to God and thinking about your worries. So wheelbarrow worries is the one on the left there. You kind of write your worry prayer, screw it up, chuck it into the wheelbarrow. Or just very simply, we had a worry wall. That's actually paper on the wall. It's not writing directly on the wall, just to be clear. Writing your worries onto that wall and kind of that act of writing them down and handing them over to God, or kind of, leaving them there and not carrying them round. So those are some of my favourites.
Brilliant. I was given the 5 minutes warning just a moment ago, so we're going to scoot through these really quickly. We're around for the rest of today, so come and talk to us. We're happy for you to steal any of our ideas, because we've pitched it from other people anyway. We've been learning as we go along, getting things right, getting things wrong, and using the website. I've talked about team already. Do think about where you can find them. We are really encouraging at the moment the 2 schools that we're working with to use their church. The vicars are involved because they're church schools for these next 2, but to use people from the congregations, and we've got parents coming in to help us. But we will, again, give them the briefing notes. Could we flick to the next slide? Is that right? She's up there. Brilliant. The briefing notes are an idea. And then we timetable, so we work out what class we've got, because we need to know how many people we need. It's easier than it looks, don't worry. But it's
the sheets are down here as well, if you can't see that.
Come and find us to show you. If you're working with reception and you're going to have 3 or 4 groups, you need to have 3 people to work with the groups and someone to host the session. That's the word that we've been. Someone who just oversees, is making sure everything's all right, moving people on. If you're working with older year groups, even if you've got more zones, you maybe still want 2 or 3 people, but they can position themselves and move around to the students rather than having to work with them. So the number of volunteers you need, depending on the style that you go for, is really important. So this is just how we work at the moment. I'm sure there's a better way. The next slide is just thinking about publicity and preparation.
Yeah, so it's worth thinking who needs to know what about the prayer space before you get cracking. So communication is really key. Think about who in school needs to know about this prayer space. Probably all staff need to be briefed about some elements, but particularly if you're using someone's classroom, you don't want the prayer space team to arrive to a disgruntled teacher because they didn't realise they were going to be displaced for a couple of days. So make sure you're communicating to the staff what to expect during your prayer space. It's good as well to communicate to the students before it happens that the prayer space is coming, to kind of get that anticipation. Maybe do an assembly the week before to introduce the theme of prayer. It's also a good idea to let the parents know. So the school will generally do this, but it might be good to kind of check, are the school going to send a letter home, or however they communicate with parents these days, and just let them know. And we always offer to open the prayer space for a day after school, so that parents can come in with their kids and come and see the space. It's good to be really open so that parents know exactly what's going on. But also you get students who are just so excited to show their parents. Not normally at primary school, not at secondary school. They don't care. But at primary school, they want their mum to come in and they're like, "Look, mum, look what I've done," and they can show them around the different zones, and you get some really sweet moments of families in the after school slot coming and doing prayer activities together. Chat to your church. Make sure local churches know, simply so they can be praying about what's going on. And you maybe at that point it's good to get someone from church who maybe doesn't want to be helping with it this time, but could come and visit it and maybe get a taste for next time. Because as we've heard, it's always good to be thinking about next time and scaling up. If you run one prayer space, they'll want you to come back and run another one. If you run one in a school, the surrounding schools will probably hear about it and want one as well. So it's worth thinking long term and scaling up as well. And just preparing and gathering resources. Make sure you have enough time and people to help you get everything ready that you need to.
Unlike we do in this sort of workshop at the moment.
Quick.
Okay, yeah, quick, okay. I'm glad all the information's on the website, so you can read it. So running the session, Lizzie's already mentioned, and you saw the lesson plans. We will always bring the students, pupils into us, sit them down, first of all, explain, get their reaction, what they think about it once you've got over that wow factor. It's one of my favourite things is watching their faces when they first walk through the door. Doesn't matter what year group they are. If you've done a good job with the decorating, they come through. You'll get that. Is it Christmas? But it's just one of those precious things that you can give as their sort of anticipation comes. But we'll sit them down. We'll explain what it is. It's a prayer space. Normally this room, and what we're going to do, how we're going to do it according to the age group. And with the older ones particularly, we will always explain, we've got the 5 W's and a how, which is, what is prayer, who prays, why do Christians pray, and when, where, and how do they pray? So we're answering those questions. So we'll try to go through those. And the thing about it is it's voluntary. So at that time, it's also important to say, this is what we do as Christians. This is why we do it. If you don't have a faith, if you're not a Christian, you can still come and do these activities. You can still go around, because what we think we're looking at are important things for you to do. As you were saying, we will always say thank you. We will always say sorry. We have our hopes and dreams for the future. We want to think about what's going on in the world. These are things that we think about, whether we pray about them, so we have a chance to reflect. And I was sharing with the group earlier, but the way we also approach it is we will say to them, what I want you to do, we've got a little one of those light boards, I think, that were very trendy at Christmas last year. And we have 3 words, which are stop, think, do. And the idea is, whatever age you are, I want you to stop first, slow down, because we've heard the school day is full on, achievement, assessment, achieve, whatever. It's there for everyone. In here, we want you to stop. We want you to think, and you can read the instructions that are there. And then we want you to do something in response. And that's either your prayer, or it's the actual activity, or both together, because what you're doing is your prayer, whether it's writing on a piece of cardboard, or hooking out a duck and thinking about that, or whether it's molding something, or making a pipe cleaner person. Whatever the action is, that's the prayer. But you can do that whether you're praying those words at the time, but you stop, you think, and you do. And then it's just having enough time for them to experience and come back together. Time is always precious in schools. Sometimes they move through very quickly. It's a shame they can't have longer, but you'll be controlled by the school timetable, how many classes you've got, how big the space is, how many students you can take at the time. You can only work within those containments, really, those elements that restrict us, but we try and make the most of each time that we can do. We were going to show you, I think there's a picture of us just doing an introduction. There's that. This is just us introducing to a Year 7 group. We were going to show a video. We put a video together which we asked some people local to us some simple questions, which were, why do you pray? Does it work? We were going to show it to you, but we'll skip past it because we just haven't got time now when we go on to the next bit.
Okay. Finally is thinking what next. So after your prayer space, then what happens? And it's good if you've run a prayer space to kind of put together some kind of evaluation or report for the school. It's really helpful for them to have evidence of what's happened for Ofsted or for other inspection bodies. So that's a really good thing to do. It's worth thinking after you've run a prayer space, is there kind of any regular involvement that you can still have in that school? There's plenty of opportunities. It's maybe worth just asking the question, can we serve the school in any way? Is there anything we can be doing regularly to help? And then I'll just mention permanent prayer spaces because you might get asked the question, if the school have loved your prayer space, they might say, can we kind of have this ongoingly? Or, they might ask about that. So something for you to consider. There's a workshop, again, in the second slot. So if you want to know more about permanent prayer spaces, go to that. From our experience, it is possible to run one, but it's not simple, and there's lots of things to think about. So it's worth thinking that through.
And finally.
Okay,
so this is just an example, again, a very long distance, but we've got some copies here. We will always give a report to the school. We always send them a report, which we use the feedback from the students. So when we've had that end of session gathering together, we get comments from them, or we might ask them to fill in a slip about what they thought about the prayer space. We use those, and the little colour boxes are comments from the students about what they've felt, what they've enjoyed, what they've got on, but we explain and give pictures from the prayer space. And these are really important to the schools for SIAMs, you've heard that, and Ofsted and any other inspection. They helped qualify the SMSC, all those sort of things. They have something that they can physically show them. And they're great also just to be able to show to another school as well, who might want to see what's going on. We've gone through this really, really quickly, and lots of information. But as we said right at the beginning, the points are in here. The information in more detail is on the website. You can go on and find the 9 points on the Prayer Spaces in Schools website. You'll find the documents about safeguarding and SMSC there, and you'll be talking to lots and lots of people who'll give you lots more examples. We've just tried to skim through and give you a taste. But most of all is go for it. it's just so exciting if you have that opportunity to do it. And it might start really small, and you might only be able to do it for a day and not have the whole school, but do it, let them have a taste of it, and then that may say, okay, we want to do it, and we want to do it for the whole school. And it may well snowball into something else amazing. But the chance and the privilege to have students come through and to pray with them or encourage them in that space because you're giving them the invitation and let them do it is to pray for themselves or reflect. It's just totally awesome. And it's just so exciting. It's really tiring, again and again explaining it, but it's really exciting. So please don't miss out on it. And do come and chat to us if you want to see any of the documents that we've flashed before your eyes mentioned, just so you can have an idea of things that you could do for yourself. I hope that all helps.